He became a billionaire from nothing, but one secret from his past threatens everything. When his daughter calls another woman mommy, his world shatters. What happens next will leave you speechless. Stay tuned to witness a story of love, sacrifice, and the shocking truth that changes everything. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss our powerful, life-changing content. I built my empire from a room that smelled of rust and rain. The ceiling leaked. The floor trembled when trucks passed. I slept beside humming machines because I could not afford silence. My father left debt. My friends left doubt. Investors laughed at my torn shoes and trembling pitch. I remember the night betrayal tasted like metal in my mouth. My partner vanished with the only contract that could save us. The bank froze my account by morning. I stood outside in the cold. Neon lights flickered against wet pavement. I felt small. Disposable. That was when she found me. Aisha. She carried warmth in her eyes and fire in her voice. She handed me tea in a paper cup and said, "Failure is loud, but truth is louder." She believed in a man who had nothing left to sell but his courage. She sold her jewelry to pay my legal fees. She worked double shifts while I rebuilt the company from dust. Her hands smelled of soap and exhaustion. Yet she smiled as if we were already victorious. Years passed in sacrifice. We skipped meals. We counted coins. We studied markets by candlelight when electricity failed. Slowly, contracts returned, then multiplied. The same men who mocked me now waited in marble lobbies to shake my hand. My name appeared on skyscrapers. My signature moved millions. I became the billionaire they once dismissed. But success did not erase memory. It sharpened it. One afternoon, during a charity visit to an orphanage my company funded, a little girl ran toward Aisha. She wrapped her tiny arms around her waist and whispered, "Mommy." The room fell silent. I felt confusion rise like heat in my chest. I turned to Aisha. "Why does your daughter call me Mommy?" I asked gently. Her composure shattered. Tears welled in her eyes. Her fingers trembled against mine. The child looked up at me and smiled with a familiarity that unsettled my soul. Then Aisha spoke words that shifted the ground beneath my feet. And in that moment I realized the greatest sacrifice she had ever made was one I had never seen. Her voice was barely steady. "She is not mine," Aisha said. "She is yours." The air left my lungs. I felt the polished marble floor tilt beneath my certainty. The child held my hand as if she had always belonged there. Aisha looked at me with eyes that had carried my storms for years. "Before you lost everything," as she whispered. "Before the betrayal, before the bank notices, there was someone else." Memories struck like cold rain. A brief love. A sudden goodbye. Pride had kept me from looking back. "She was pregnant," Aisha said softly. "She died giving birth." The orphanage director stepped forward. He explained how anonymous funds had covered the hospital bills. School fees. Medical care. I turned slowly to Aisha. "You knew?" She nodded. "I found out when rebuilding the company." I searched quietly. I watched her grow. "I waited until you were strong enough to hear the truth." My chest tightened with shame. While I chased contracts and revenge, she protected my blood. The little girl traced the lines of my palm. Her touch was warm. Trusting, I told her stories about you, Aisha continued. About a man who rose from nothing. About courage. About honor. She chose to call me Mummy because I stayed. Tears burned my eyes. Not from weakness. From awakening, all my wealth felt small beside her sacrifice. She had given her youth to my ambition. Her comfort to my chaos. Her heart to a child who was proof of my past mistakes. I knelt before my daughter. The word felt fragile and sacred inside me. I did not know, I said, my voice rough with regret. Aisha placed her hand on my shoulder. You know now. In that quiet hall filled with sunlight and distant laughter, I understood that success is empty without responsibility. That love is proven in silence, not applause. I reached for both their hands, ready to say the words that would redefine our family. When footsteps echoed behind us, and a familiar voice spoke my name with a tone that carried unfinished history, I turned slowly. The voice belonged to Kareem, the man who once stole my contract, the man who vanished when I collapsed. Time had carved lines into his face, but arrogance still lingered in his posture. He glanced at Aisha, then at the child, then at me. So this is the empire you built from my mistake, he said with a thin smile. My fists tightened. Old humiliation surged through my veins. The nights of hunger, the headlines of failure. But my daughter's small hand remained wrapped around my finger. Soft, trusting. Kareem's eyes shifted. There is something you should know, he continued. The contract I took, it was never meant to save you. Silence pressed against my ears. It was designed to trap you. Massive penalties. Hidden clauses. I found out too late. I ran because I was afraid. The words felt like shards of glass. For years I had built my rage around betrayal. Now it trembled under truth. You could have told me, I said quietly. I was weak, he replied. I chose survival over loyalty. Aisha stepped beside me, her presence steady as stone. We all face a moment that defines us, as she said calmly. You ran. He rebuilt. Kareem looked down. For the first time, he seemed small. I'm bankrupt, he admitted. I came to ask for help. The irony was sharp. The man who once left me drowning now stood asking for air. My mind raced with memories of cold streets and closed doors. My heart pounded with the old hunger for revenge. But my daughter looked up at me. Her eyes held no bitterness, only curiosity. Only hope. In that fragile pause, I realized the greatest inheritance I could give her was not wealth. It was character. I inhaled slowly. The scent of polished wood and sunlight filled my chest. Kareem waited. Aisha watched. And I opened my mouth to answer, knowing that whatever I said next would shape not only his future, but the kind of father my daughter would remember me to be. I will help you, I said at last. Not because you deserve it, but because I remember who I was when I had nothing. Kareem's shoulders trembled. Relief flickered across his face, mixed with shame. But understand this, I continued, my voice steady. I am not saving you. I am giving you a chance to rebuild yourself. The words felt heavier than any contract I had signed. For years, I believed power meant dominance, that success meant proving others wrong. Yet standing there, holding my daughter's small hand, I understood something deeper. True wealth is the freedom to choose mercy. Kareem lowered his head. "I will not waste it again," he said quietly. I nodded, but my attention shifted to Aisha. She watched me with those same eyes that once found me on a cold pavement. Eyes that had never measured my worth by numbers. The orphanage director cleared his throat gently. "There is more," he said. My pulse tightened. He handed me a thin file. Inside were documents. Medical reports. Adoption papers unsigned. "You were listed as the father," he explained. "But there was another name added recently." I looked down. It was Aisha's legal guardian. She had secured my daughter's future without demanding a place in it, without asking for recognition. Emotions swelled in my chest, thick and overwhelming. "You carried this alone," I whispered to her. She smiled softly. "I carried it for us." My daughter tugged at my sleeve. "Are we going home now?" she asked innocently. Home. The word felt different now. Not a mansion. Not glass towers. But wherever these two hearts stood beside me. I closed the file slowly. I knew what I wanted. I knew what mattered. I drew a breath, ready to make a decision that would bind our lives together forever. When Aisha's phone began to ring, and the expression on her face changed in a way I had never seen before, she stared at the screen. The color drained from her face. For a moment, she did not answer. The phone kept vibrating in her trembling hand. "Aisha," I said softly, "what is it?" She swallowed. "It is the hospital." A cold current moved through my chest. She stepped aside to answer. Her voice lowered, strained, fragile. "Yes. I understand. How serious?" I watched her shoulders stiffen. The strength she had carried for years seemed to flicker. When she ended the call, her eyes met mine. "There is a complication," she said quietly. "The doctor says I have been ignoring the symptoms for months." My breath caught. "What symptoms?" She hesitated. The silence was louder than any confession. "I did not want to distract you," she admitted. "You were negotiating the merger. You were finally at peace with your past. I thought it would pass." The words cut deeper than betrayal ever had. "You sold your jewelry for me," I said. "You raised my child in silence. And now you carry pain alone?" Her lips trembled, but she forced a gentle smile. "I am not afraid," as she whispered. "I have lived a full life beside you." Our daughter looked between us, confused by the tension she could not understand. I knelt before Aisha. The polished floor felt cold beneath my knees. "All the wealth I built means nothing if I fail you now," I said firmly. "We go to the hospital together. Every test. Every treatment. I will stand where you stood for me." Her composure finally broke. Tears fell freely down her cheeks. For the first time since I met her, she allowed herself to lean into me. In that embrace, I felt the fragile truth of life. Fortune can rise overnight, but love must be protected every day. We walked toward the exit, our daughter between us. And as the hospital doors opened ahead, I realized the next battle would not be fought in boardrooms or markets, but in a quiet white room where courage would be tested in a way money could never solve. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and fear. White walls, soft footsteps, muted voices behind closed doors. For years I commanded rooms filled with executives. Now I stood powerless beneath fluorescent lights. Aisha squeezed my hand. Her palm felt warm, steady, braver than mine. The doctor entered with a file pressed to his chest. His expression was careful. "There is a tumor," he said gently. "It is early, but it cannot be ignored." The word echoed inside me. Tumor. I had faced bankruptcy, public humiliation, legal threats. Nothing had prepared me for this. Treatment? I asked, forcing strength into my voice. Surgery, followed by therapy. Her chances are strong because we court it now. Strong, the word felt like a rope thrown into deep water. Aisha exhaled slowly. "I told you I was not afraid," as she whispered. But I saw it. The flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. I turned to the doctor. "Prepare everything. The best surgeons. The best care. Whatever it costs." He nodded, but I realized something in that moment. Money could open doors. It could not sit in the operating room. It could not replace faith. That night, I sat beside her hospital bed. The machines hummed softly. Her breathing was calm, almost peaceful. I studied the woman who had carried my failures without complaint, who had protected my daughter before I even knew she existed. I leaned closer. "When I built my empire," I said quietly, "I thought I was proving the world wrong. But you were building something greater. A family. A future. A man worthy of love." Her fingers tightened weakly around mine. "If I walk out of this stronger," she murmured, "promise me something." "Anything." Do not measure your life by profit again. Measure it by presence. The words settled deep within me. The nurse entered to prepare her for surgery. They began to wheel her away. Our daughter ran beside the bed. "Mommy will come back, right?" I swallowed the fear rising in my throat. "Yes," I said firmly. "She will come back stronger." The doors to the operating room closed slowly, and I was left standing there, facing the longest hours of my life. Holding hope like fragile glass in my hands, the red light above the operating room door turned on. Time lost its meaning. Each second felt heavy. Each breath tasted like metal. I sat beside my daughter on a narrow bench. She leaned against my arm, trusting me to be strong. For the first time in years, I prayed without pride. Not for wealth. Not for victory. Only for her life. Memories crowded my mind. Aisha studying in verses at midnight. Aisha laughing softly when I doubted myself. Aisha teaching my daughter to read my name from a magazine cover. She had loved me when I was broken. She had loved my child before I even knew how hours passed. The surgeon finally stepped out. His mask was lowered. His expression unreadable. My heart pounded against my ribs. "The surgery is complete," he said. I felt the world pause. We removed the tumor successfully. Air rushed back into my lungs. My daughter squeezed my hand tightly, but, he continued gently, "The next 48 hours are critical." Hope returned, fragile but alive. When they allowed me to see her, she looked small against the white sheets. Pale. Silent. Machines blinked beside her. I took her hand carefully. "I am here," I whispered, "and I will never chase success while leaving you behind again." Her eyelids fluttered slightly, as if hearing me from a distance. In that quiet room, I made a decision that no board vote could reverse. I would step down as CEO. I would build leaders instead of empires. I would be present at breakfast tables, at school meetings, at hospital rooms. Because wealth without love is poverty in disguise. Our daughter climbed onto the chair beside me. We wait together, as she said bravely. Yes, we would wait. But as the monitor beside Aisha suddenly let out an unfamiliar sound, and nurses rushed toward her bed with urgent voices, I felt my heart freeze once more. Realizing the battle was not over yet, the sharp alarm pierced the room. Nurses moved swiftly. Calm faces. Urgent hands. Her blood pressure is dropping, someone said. I stepped back as they surrounded her bed. My daughter clutched my coat. Fear crawled through my chest like ice. Sir, please wait outside, a nurse urged gently. The door closed between us again. Glass separated me from the woman who had carried my entire becoming. I pressed my palm against it. This was the real negotiation. Not with markets. Not with rivals. But with fate. I whispered every promise I had never spoken aloud. I will slow down. I will listen more. I will love louder. Minutes stretched into lifetimes. Then suddenly, the alarm softened. The hurried movements eased. The doctor stepped out once more. She is stable, he said firmly. There was a complication, but her heart responded well. Stable. Such a small word. Such a miracle. When I was allowed back inside, I saw color slowly returning to her cheeks. Her breathing steadied. I leaned close. You are stronger than every empire I built, I whispered, her eyes opened faintly. Weak, but aware. I told you, as she murmured, barely audible. I am not afraid. Tears blurred my vision. Our daughter reached up carefully. Mommy, we are here. Aisha managed the smallest smile. In that fragile moment, surrounded by machines and quiet hope, I understood the final lesson of my journey. Success is not the height you reach. It is the hands you refuse to let go of while climbing. I thought the hardest battles were behind me. Poverty, betrayal, ambition. But this was where legacy was truly written. As I held her hand, feeling her pulse steady beneath my fingers, I prepared myself to tell her about the decision I had made about the company. When the doctor returned with new test results in his hand, and the expression on his face shifted once again, the room grew still. The doctor closed the door gently behind him. He looked at Aisha, then at me. There is something unexpected, he said carefully. My heartbeat quickened again. The pathology report shows the tumor was aggressive, he continued. But the margins are clear. We removed it in time. Relief tried to rise, but his pores held it back. She will need months of recovery, therapy, monitoring. Her body is strong, but it has endured more than we realized. Endured more than we realized. Those words pierced me. How much had she hidden behind her quiet smile? How many nights had she swallowed pain so I could sleep without worry? Aisha listened calmly, almost peacefully. I will do what is necessary, she said. The doctor nodded and left us alone. Silence wrapped around the room again. I pulled my chair closer to her bed. I am stepping down, I told her softly. As CEO. Effective immediately. Her eyes widened faintly. You built that company from nothing, she whispered. No, I said gently. We built it. But I almost lost what mattered most while protecting it. Our daughter leaned against the bed carefully. I want you home, she said innocently. Home. The word felt sacred now. Aisha studied my face, searching for hesitation, for pride. She found none. Are you certain? She asked. I chased success to prove I was not worthless, I admitted. But you already proved I was enough. Tears slipped quietly from her eyes. In that moment, I felt richer than any billionaire on earth. Not because of numbers, but because of clarity. Outside the window, dawn began to break. Soft gold light spilled across the white sheets. A new beginning. I squeezed her hand gently. When you walk out of this hospital, I said, we begin again. Slower. Together. No more silent sacrifices. She breathed in deeply. A fragile, hopeful breath. And just as peace began to settle between us, her monitor flickered once more, and a nurse stepped forward urgently. Checking something on the screen that made her expression turn serious again, the nurse adjusted the wires carefully. It may be nothing, she said, but her tone carried caution. My chest tightened again. The monitor showed an irregular rhythm. Not violent, but uncertain. Aisha closed her eyes briefly. Not in fear, in focus. Stay with me, I whispered. I am here, as she replied softly. The doctor returned quickly. He studied the screen, then her chart. Her body is reacting to the medication, he explained. We will adjust the dosage. Small decisions. Precise movements. Life balanced on details invisible to power or wealth. I watched every motion as if attention alone could protect her. Minutes passed. The rhythm on the screen slowly steadied beep. 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 Consistent. I exhaled a breath I did not know I was holding. The doctor looked at me firmly. She needs rest. Stability. No stress. I nodded. Stress had been the language of my entire career. Deadlines. Competition. Relentless growth. That world suddenly felt distant. When we were alone again, I leaned closer to her. I once believed strength meant never stopping, I said quietly. But strength is choosing what to protect. She studied me with tired but luminous eyes. You finally understand, as she whispered. Our daughter had fallen asleep in the chair, her small hands still touching the edge of the bed. I looked at both of them. This was my empire. Breathing. Fragile. Priceless. I will restructure everything, I continued softly. The company will operate without consuming us. I will create foundations for children like her. For families like ours. Aisha's lips curved into the faintest smile. Then this pain has purpose, as she murmured. Purpose. The word settled deeply within me. Outside, the sun rose higher, spilling warmth into the sterile room. For the first time, I did not feel chased by ambition. I felt anchored by love. I thought the storm had finally passed. But as the doctor reviewed one last scan near the window, his brow furrowed slightly, and he turned back toward us with a question that made my heart tense once more. The doctor's question lingered in the air. We have one final step, he said gently. Chemotherapy will be needed to ensure the cancer does not return. It will be challenging. Aisha looked at me. Her hand found mine. "We have faced worse," she whispered. "Together." In that moment, I realized the true meaning of strength. Not in boardrooms. Not in skyscrapers. Not in bank accounts. Strength is showing up. Every day. Even when fear grips your chest. Even when the world has knocked you down. We embraced quietly, our daughter between us. She had grown from a symbol of my past mistakes into a beacon of our future. A reminder that love, sacrifice, and faith shape a legacy far greater than money. The hospital days became a rhythm of care, hope, and patience. Aisha endured each treatment with courage that humbled everyone. I learned to measure time not in profits, but in moments shared. The laughter at breakfast. The small hand in mine. The triumph of a child learning her first word or drawing a picture for her mother. Months passed. When the final scan confirmed her recovery, we stood together by the window. Sunlight spilled across the room, warm and forgiving. Aisha smiled softly, her hand resting lightly on her chest. "I survived," she said simply. "And we survived together." I held our daughter close and kissed Aisha's forehead. I had learned the lesson no contract could teach. No deal could buy. Wealth is meaningless without love. Power is hollow without compassion. And success is brightest when shared with those who stood beside you in the shadows. I returned to my company later, not as a ruler, but as a mentor. I guided with patience. I led with humility. I built a culture that honored life over profit. Because I had faced loss, betrayal, fear, and I had learned that true legacy is measured not by what you take, but by what you protect and nurture. Aisha, my daughter, and I walked through life stronger, gentler, and wiser. The empire I once dreamed of had grown into something greater. A family bound by love, sacrifice, and the unshakable knowledge that life's greatest victories are the hearts we touch. And in the quiet moments, I often whispered to myself, "Do not chase fortune at the cost of your soul. Chase love, and everything else will follow." Thank you for listening to this heartfelt story. If it moved you, share it, comment below, and remind someone you are never alone.